I never thought that one day my success would become someone else's story. My name is Jordan, and for as long as I can remember, I've had to work twice as hard to prove myself. Not because I lacked talent, but because the world often refused to see it. It all started with the biggest academic competition of the year, one that could change my future. The National Science and Innovation Challenge. Winning it meant scholarships, college opportunities, and recognition. But for me, it was more than just a title. It was a chance to show everyone, including myself, that I belonged. For months, I poured everything into my project. Late nights, early mornings, missed hangouts, skipped meals. While others saw a simple school competition, I saw a door, one that I was determined to open. My project was unique, something no one had attempted before. I had developed a groundbreaking AI-powered tool for detecting early signs of rare neurological disorders. It wasn't just an idea, it was personal. My grandmother had suffered from a disease that went undiagnosed for too long. I wanted to change that, but I wasn't alone in this journey. Mr. Calloway, my science teacher, had always been in the background. He wasn't particularly encouraging, but he wasn't discouraging either. In fact, he barely paid attention to me unless I did something impressive. When I first introduced my project idea, he shrugged and said, "It's ambitious, but let's see if you can actually pull it off." And I did. After months of relentless effort, I finally submitted my work. The competition day arrived, and I stood in front of a panel of judges, my heart pounding as I explained the intricate details of my research. The questions were tough, but I had spent nights preparing for every possible challenge. When they finally announced the results, my name echoed through the auditorium. I had won. The feeling was indescribable. The applause, the recognition. It was everything I had dreamed of. My friends congratulated me, my family was overjoyed, and even my usually indifferent classmates gave me nods of respect. But the most surprising reaction came from Mr. Calloway. I saw the way he smiled, the way he shook my hand a little too firmly. And then, as he spoke to the other teachers, I noticed something strange. He wasn't just proud, he was taking credit. At first, it was subtle, phrases like, "I knew Jordan had it in him," or "We worked hard on this project." But as the day went on, his words shifted. Suddenly, it was his guidance that had led to my victory, and that was just the beginning. At first, I thought I had misheard him. Maybe I was just overthinking it. But as the days passed, it became impossible to ignore. The school had made a big deal out of my victory. A special assembly was held, and my name was announced over the loudspeakers. My project was featured in the school newsletter, and a local news station even reached out for an interview. It should have been the proudest moment of my life. But instead, it felt like I was slowly being erased from my own success story. Mr. Calloway had found his way into every conversation about my achievement. Whenever someone congratulated me, he was right there, adding his own version of events. Yes, I guided Jordan through every step of the process. It was a tough project, but I made sure he stayed on track. I pushed him to think beyond the obvious, and that's why he won. Pushed me? Stayed on track? He barely spoke to me throughout the entire process. The only time he really acknowledged my work was after I had already finished it. At first, I let it slide. I told myself it didn't matter. I knew the truth, and so did the judges. But the more he spoke, the more people started believing his version. Even the principal, a man I had always respected, shook his hand and thanked him for mentoring me. The final blow came when the local news interview aired. The reporter had spoken to both of us. I had spent almost an hour passionately explaining my research, my inspiration, my struggles. But when the segment aired, most of my words had been cut. Instead, the screen was filled with Mr. Calloway talking about his efforts. As a teacher, it's my job to identify potential and nurture it. Jordan had the talent, but I gave him the direction he needed. I sat there, watching my own story being rewritten in real time. My parents were furious, my friends were confused, and I was left wondering how this had happened. The worst part? People started treating me differently. Some of my classmates whispered that I'd only won because of Mr. Calloway. A few even joked that I was just the face of his project. The recognition I had worked so hard for was slipping through my fingers. I knew I had to do something. But how do you stand up against a respected teacher without sounding ungrateful, or worse, arrogant? I wasn't sure yet, but I knew one thing. Mr. Calloway might have taken credit for my success, but I wasn't about to let him take my voice. I couldn't stay silent anymore. Every time I heard Mr. Calloway talk about his role in my success, something inside me burned. It wasn't just frustration. It was a deep, gut-wrenching feeling of injustice. At first, I tried to ignore it. I told myself that people who really mattered knew the truth. But as days passed, I saw how the narrative kept shifting. My classmates started believing Mr. Calloway's version of the story. Even some teachers nodded in agreement when he spoke about how he had mentored me through the competition. Then one day, something happened that pushed me over the edge. The school announced that I would be receiving an official award in a district-wide ceremony. My name was on the program, but right below it, in bold letters, was, "With special recognition to Mr. Calloway for his outstanding mentorship." That was it. I decided I couldn't let this go any further. I needed someone to listen, someone who had the authority to set things straight, and I knew exactly where to go. The principal, Mr. Harris, had always been fair. He wasn't the type to take rumors at face value, and if there was one person who could fix this, it was him. So I walked into his office after school. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. I told him everything. How I had worked on the project alone. How Mr. Calloway had barely been involved. How he had taken credit for my work, and how people were now questioning whether I had even earned my victory. Mr. Harris listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. "I was afraid this might be the case," he said. His words surprised me. "You knew?" I asked. "I had my suspicions," he admitted. "The way Mr. Calloway spoke about your project, it felt rehearsed, but I had no proof." That's when I pulled out my notebook. I had kept records of everything. My research notes, my planning stages, my emails to competition organizers. I even had a timeline that showed how I had worked on this long before Mr. Calloway had even noticed. Mr. Harris flipped through the pages, nodding slowly. Then he looked at me. "I'm going to handle this," he said. "And I promise you, the truth will come out." For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. The next day was a turning point in my life. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew that whatever happened, I was about to find out if justice really had a place in the world. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Mr. Harris called me into his office. His face was serious, but there was something reassuring about the way he looked at me. The school had already arranged a meeting with Mr. Calloway, and I could tell that things were about to get complicated. As I sat across from Mr. Harris, my heart raced. I had already gone through everything in my mind. I had shared my side of the story, and now it was time for Mr. Calloway to answer for his actions. I could hear the faint murmur of voices coming from down the hall. Mr. Calloway had arrived. My palms were sweating, but I forced myself to remain calm. "I need you to stay composed, Jordan," Mr. Harris said, his tone kind but firm. "We're going to clear this up." I nodded, trying to steady my breath. I had no idea what was about to happen, but one thing was certain. I wasn't going to back down. Moments later, Mr. Calloway walked into the office. He looked calm, almost too calm, like someone who was sure of himself. As he sat down, he shot me a quick smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. I could feel the tension in the room building as Mr. Harris started to speak. "Mr. Calloway," Mr. Harris began, his voice firm but not aggressive. "There have been some concerns raised about your involvement in Jordan's recent competition win. Specifically, there have been claims that you have misrepresented your role in the project. I've had a chance to review the evidence, and I think we need to clear up a few misunderstandings." For a moment, Mr. Calloway was silent. He glanced at me, and I could see a flicker of irritation in his eyes. He wasn't used to being questioned like this. "I don't know what Jordan is talking about," Mr. Calloway said smoothly, his voice filled with feigned surprise. "I've always been supportive of his work. I've helped him whenever he needed guidance." Mr. Harris didn't let him off the hook. "It seems there's more to it than that. Jordan has provided documentation, including emails and records of his work. According to these, he was working on the project months before you even knew about it. He developed the concept, the research, the design, all on his own. The only involvement you had was at the very end, after the project had already been completed. The air in the room grew thick with tension. I could see Mr. Calloway's jaw tighten as he tried to process the accusation. He shifted in his chair, clearly uncomfortable, but he wasn't ready to admit anything yet. "I don't know what Jordan's trying to say," Mr. Calloway said again, his voice slightly less steady now. "I did mentor him, I encouraged him, I provided feedback, and I'm not the only one who saw it that way. Many of the faculty members, including the principal, can attest to my involvement." Mr. Harris didn't back down. "We've spoken to your colleagues, and they've confirmed that you were only involved after the bulk of the work had already been done. Your claims of mentorship are not supported by the evidence." There was a long pause, and for a moment I thought Mr. Calloway might actually say something honest, but instead he leaned forward, trying to regain his composure. "I've been teaching for over 20 years, he said, his voice turning colder. "I know how to recognize potential. If I saw something in Jordan, it's because I'm a good teacher. I know how to push students to their limits." Mr. Harris didn't flinch. "No one is disputing your experience, Mr. Calloway, but this isn't about pushing students. This is about taking credit for someone else's hard work. You may be a teacher, but that doesn't give you the right to rewrite someone else's story, especially when it's to the detriment of that student." The truth hit hard. I had expected resistance, but I hadn't anticipated the complete breakdown in Mr. Calloway's facade. His calm demeanor evaporated as he realized there was no way out of this. He looked down, avoiding eye contact with both of us. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," he muttered, almost as if he was talking to himself. "I thought if I could just claim a little part of it, maybe I'd get some recognition too. It's been so long since anyone noticed my work. I thought this could be my moment." The vulnerability in his voice was unexpected, but it didn't change the fact that he had tried to steal something that wasn't his. Mr. Harris shook his head, his expression softening but still resolute. "It's not about recognition, Mr. Calloway. It's about doing what's right, and right now, the right thing is to admit what you've done and make things right with Jordan." I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. This wasn't the way I had imagined things unfolding, but somehow it felt like justice was finally within reach. Mr. Calloway sighed, his shoulders slumping. I'm sorry, Jordan. I never should have taken credit for your work. I was wrong, and I can't take back what I did, but I'll do whatever it takes to fix this." Mr. Harris nodded, signaling that this part of the conversation was over. We'll make a public statement and the recognition will go where it belongs, on Jordan's hard work. You'll also need to issue an apology to him and the school community for the misleading claims you've made. The weight of those words hit me like a wave. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could finally breathe. The truth had been revealed, and while it hadn't been easy, it felt like the right thing had been done. That afternoon, Mr. Harris called for an assembly, where he addressed the entire school. The principal explained the situation with grace and transparency, making it clear that the honor and recognition for my achievement were mine, and mine alone. Mr. Calloway stood beside him, offering a sincere apology to the students and teachers for his actions. The apology was important, but what meant more to me was the acknowledgement. The people who mattered, the students, the faculty, my family, knew the truth. I wasn't just the face of a project. I was the creator. I had earned this, and no one could take that away from me. In the weeks that followed, things slowly began to return to normal. I still saw Mr. Calloway around school, but our interactions were distant, and I could tell he no longer had the same power over the students he once did. As for me, I was finally able to take full ownership of my success, and it felt good. The feeling of justice was something I would never forget. It wasn't just about being recognized for my work. It was about standing up for what was right, no matter how hard it seemed. And in the end, I knew that I had done just that.